Hi everyone, welcome back to Connect Conversations, styled by Infinite Gents Grooming. 25% off your first haircut when booking with the Booksy app. Today, I'm joined by my very good friend and secondary school teacher, Mr. Scott Mathers. All right, mate?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Listen, mate, thanks very much for coming on. Today, obviously going to be tackling education. So, what got you into teaching?
Well, it's definitely something that I haven't planned on sort of long term, like being at school. Teachers always ask you, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to uni? Do you want to get a job? I'll be honest, I didn't really know. Like, and I tell kids that all the time, like, just did all right at school, wasn't like amazing, like straight A's, everything, but did all right, and then basically taking certain subjects, so English, history, modern studies, I was like pretty good at that kind of literacy based subjects, quite good at that sort of thing. I'm interested in it as well, so pretty much for taking that, and I'll try not mention too many people's names on this for obvious reasons, but big thanks to my modern studies teacher at school, Stephen McAvoy. Guy was an absolute hero. Like, he took me in from history, so you're kind of crashing that subject, but because they're quite transferable and quite similar, he was like, you've done well in history, you'd be really good coming into modern studies. We did that, done quite well on that, and that's what made me then go and study politics at uni. But again, even at that point, I'm still no thinking teaching's for me. I'm interested in it, I'm good at it, I'll see where it takes me. And sometimes you do need to stress that to kids because they're always like under pressure to be like, I need to plan out the next 3 years of my life, the next 5 years of my life. But if you just say to them, look, if you're interested in something and you're good at it, see where it takes you. Like, you actually never know, and ended up graduating from uni, spent a few years still just working part-time, did a bit of other stuff like DJing and stuff like that, and then just decided I'm going to contact my old modern studies teacher. I'm just going to email him, see how it goes. If he replies, great, I'll jump in and get a bit of experience volunteering, and it kind of just fell into place for there. So.
Class. And obviously I feel there's a big pressure on kids nowadays to, you need to go into uni, you need to follow some predetermined path, if you like, and that's the way it should be. Is that your opinion on things, and is that shifted slightly, over the years in teaching?
I think one of the things that will hopefully come across in this podcast is that, like, there's a lot of like jargon and terms in education. Like, you won't find a job that's got more acronyms and more jargon, but like positive destinations is a thing that people talk about a lot. So if a kid goes into part-time employment, full-time employment, college, university, they do a bit of volunteering, whatever it is, that counts as positive destinations. And there's obviously statistics and stuff like that come out for each school. So every school is obviously striving to get as high a number of positive destinations as possible, but sometimes it is almost impossible to get 100% because there's kids that are long-term absences, like they just disengage with school completely, and then you can't really get in contact with them. So I do think there is a big push for university, but again, I'll sometimes say that to my 5th years and my 6th years, like, it might be for you, but don't just go and do it because all your pals are doing it, or because you feel like you're getting pressure from external people. So it could be people in school, it could be family and stuff like that, if maybe they've went to university and they're kind of pushing that on them, because quite often what we see is kids will get the grades, they'll go to uni, and then they'll last a month, 2 months, and then drop out, and that's obviously not really good for anybody. And it might just be that the course wasn't suitable for them, but I tend to find that a lot of them will drop out, but there can obviously be other reasons for why they would drop out. So I think it is something that's kind of lingering in the background, but obviously there's many other issues that I'm sure we'll get stuck into.
Today, yeah. So obviously we get the meaty subjects to get into. So first thing, obviously the Curriculum for Excellence. Obviously that was created in 2010. What was the year you started teaching?
27, well, I was a student teacher in 2017, but 2018.
So you went through the Curriculum for Excellence for school. It was a thing when you were at school?
It's something that's been in the longer term planning since about 2003, but then it's came in and we've obviously changed. So when I was at school, I don't know if you were the same, but we did standard grades.
Yeah,
and then standard grades effectively have turned into nationals, and there's some similarity there, but there's also differences. So for example, if you were in a credit standard grade class, you sat the credit exam, but you also had a general paper, so that if you had a bad day or you didn't perform at your maximum, if you didn't pass a credit paper, you knew you would get the general pass, so you got something. You haven't wasted a year of your life or 2 years of your life and getting nothing for it, whereas now we have National 5 and National 4. National 4, it has no assessment, like externally, so you don't sit in an exam hall, but you still can get a pass. And National 5 is what it is, so if you're working at National 5 and you've just spent 18 months working towards this and then you don't pass, you have nothing for it. You've nothing to show for it, and you've effectively wasted that time in that class. You know, you've not done well in your prelim, then you don't do well in your exam, and then you might need to then resit it, and you're doing the same courses, the same classes over and over again, and that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the pupil themselves, and it's definitely not good for the teacher as well, going back through the same courses with a bunch of kids that have all done it the year before. So, no, there's definitely obviously issues with it, and I know that there's kind of stuff in the back. There's always stuff, reviews, educational reviews and stuff like that in the background, but don't really know what's coming next, because even recently I'm seeing other things that are coming out about, I'll be trying to move away from high stakes exams, so like you turn up on the day, if you do well, you've passed, and you go on to bigger and better things. If you if you don't perform well, then you're obviously held back effectively, or you need to reset it or whatever, and trying to move more towards a sort of balanced assessment, so you have maybe like 50% coursework, 50% exam, because every subject's different as well. Like obviously I won't get into it too technically, but like some subjects will be 80% exam, 20% coursework. Other subjects will be 100% exam. Other subjects might be closer to that 50-50 split that I was referencing. So it can be quite unfair and unbalanced, and sometimes the kids won't see that themselves, but they'll be like, oh, why am I doing much better in this than this other thing? But actually not realising that, that coursework I've submitted, I know I've done really well in that, so my chances of succeeding are obviously far higher. Whereas for me, my own subject personally, it's like a 20%, 80% split, or 27%, 73%. That's kind of high stakes on the exam. So if you've not revised, you've not studied properly, you've not worked well through the year, there's a high chance that's going to come back to bite you towards the end of the year. So no, there's definitely massive issues with it.
Obviously, when it was made, I think a lot of the stuff around it was, because I'd done a kind of wee bit of digging on it, because obviously not being my main subject, pardon the pun, but it was made for it was basically around exam performance. It was like there was too much focus on that, so it was more around, people's personal development, if you like, outside the exam performance. But obviously what you're saying there, I feel like then it's not had that, it's not the same, it's not the focus.
I don't think it's had that intended. It's almost been like unintentional, that the majority of the stuff in the classroom is all geared towards the academic stuff. So when you're in first year, second year and third year, it is probably more like what you would expect the curriculum for excellence and what it was supposed to be at the start, whereas what you'll tend to find is that when you get to senior phase, so fourth year and above, it's very much like a scramble to the exams. So it's like, you need to get through this course, you need to do this, you need to do this prelim, then you've got something else coming up, and then it's time to prepare for the exam.
I feel there's too much pressure on kids.
But there is, but obviously the other things that you were talking about, like the personal development and the kind of developing your social skills,
for younger life,
that's
life
that stuff that all happens kind of, I don't want to say ad hoc, but it does happen, but it's as much outside the classroom as it is inside the classroom. So again, just for talking sake, recently in March we took pupils to the Scottish Parliament, because it's modern studies, taking them there, that's something that they might never get a chance to go and do on their own, and also helps relate it to the learning that they're actually doing in the class. But that's something that you have to do that on your own. You have to book that through them, you have to set up the transport, you need to get permission slips signed and all that other stuff, taking kids on ski trips and other trips and stuff like that, and giving them those opportunities. That's what's going to develop them away from the academic side as well. But I would say definitely in the classroom, as you get further up the school, it is definitely all geared towards exams, unfortunately.
Yeah. Something else we were going to kind of touch on was kids that come from deprived areas, those poorer areas, if you like. What kind of barriers do pupils in poorer areas face then? Or do you find they face in the classroom environment, in the exam environment, from your experience?
So many, like obviously I'll try and keep my references as kind of general as possible, but like again, going back to those acronyms and that jargon, like there's an index called SIMD, so it's Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, and it works in either deciles, so in 10%, so it can work in quintiles of 20%, so the whole country of Scotland is mapped out in levels of deprivation, so it's linked to crime rates, how good's the quality of the housing, how good is transport links and all that stuff. And we find that certainly where I'm working right now, there's a large percentage of pupils that are in from the most deprived areas. So that would be SIMD 1 and 2, the most deprived, 10%, 20% compared to the rest of Scotland. So you know that's coming before you've even met the kids, do you know what I mean? So there's so many things that you see that are visible. So even things like uniform, like have they got their iPad? Is it charged? You know, are they ready? Have they even things like, have they slept well? Like these are things that people don't realise away from school and away from education. It's like stuff like that. Have you ate properly?
Yeah.
I mean, when did you last have your meal? How long have you slept for? Did you go to your bed at 2 a.m. last night, and then you're up and you've got a prelim the next day? How are you going to be able to perform at your maximum when that's the circumstances you've faced? And that's even before you get into the really extreme things of, you know, physical abuse, emotional abuse, could be even sexual abuse, neglect, stuff like that. So sometimes when you see a kid presenting in a certain way in the class, obviously you're a bit kind of like, why is this happening? Or you speak to them and obviously they might not volunteer that kind of information.
Have you got I'm assuming that it's a daft question, but you've got the processes in place then when you notice that behaviour going on longer than maybe a day or two?
Yeah, it could be, if it's a one-off, you might kind of keep it in as a mental note in your mind and just say, right, okay, but if it's obviously something you notice over days or even weeks, you might have to flag it up. So there's certain things that could even be, again, I won't speak on it too specifically, but there's things that would be like child protection. So if the child is in danger out with the school, then it's something that we have a designated staff member that's the child protection officer, so you would go straight to them and voice your concerns, and then they would then deal with it, and they would update you as and when you needed to be updated. But it's one of the things that I think is becoming more and more challenging because the issues are becoming way more complex. Like, it's not just a case of the haves and the have-nots, like the kids that turn up with fancy trainers and the kids that don't, the kids that have got a shirt that they've maybe worn three times that week compared to the kid that's got brand new uniform, turn up in August, they've got brand new bag, brand new trainers, brand new jacket. But even then, you might think, oh, they look like they're doing all right, but actually they might not be because their parents might just be kind of throwing that at them.
It's all show.
It's all materialistic things, but actually,
on the inside,
do the parents say to them when they get in for school, how did you get on the day? Have you got homework? Or you've got a test next week? Are you going to study for that? Or how did you get on with your prelims? Like, do they actually care? Do they read the reports that we send? Do they turn up for parents' evening?
How do you find that though, as a teacher? Like, I'm assuming there's been situations where that's arised in your classes. Is that a real difficult thing for you to deal with, or have you got your own processes in place in terms of helping that child?
Something that you just have to, it's very much like each case is different and unique, and you have to just deal with it as best you can. So obviously we know that there'll be kids that are like, their attendance is really bad, or they're always late, or they will refuse to do anything away from school, and then it comes to parents' evening, and then you figure out, you know, their parents are nowhere to be seen, and that obviously kind of doesn't surprise you, because you're like, well, if the mum or the dad or both of them don't value education, then obviously neither is the son or the daughter. Do you know what I mean? It usually works like that. It's very rare that you see an instance where the parents are on the ball and they care and they turn up and they're asking. You don't have to ask questions, but obviously the ones that are really interested will ask questions, and you're like, right, they're really involved in that kid's life, and you can see that, and that presents itself in every single way. Like, how organised are they? Do they turn up on time? Do they put in effort?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you can see that really clearly. It's quite rare that a parent will be really involved, but the kid's very detached, or the parents are completely detached, but also the kid's kind of ignoring that and shunning that.
Yep.
It does happen, obviously, but it's quite rare.
Yeah.
You find that, so it's quite difficult.
Do you ever feel like a social worker or a counsellor, or do you try and very much draw the line between teacher and pass that responsibility on to the child protection officer, if you like?
I think that the lines can obviously be blurred. Like, we would all be lying if we said that coming in, if only teaching was coming in at 8:30, teaching your classes and then leaving.
That's definitely.
It would be a much easier place, and I'd been much better off for it,
Aye.
mentally and physically. Like, it's you're a teacher first and foremost. Then you might be something resembling a counsellor. You could be a therapist, you're a social worker,
I
you're
have like 4 or 5 different
all,
jobs in the one
all
day.
of the above. Like it could even be something simple as like a friendship group thing. A kid will wait at the end of a class and say something's happened in this class or another class, and they can't be sitting next to this person because something's happened outside the school.
Yep.
And then that's all swirling around in your
Yep.
mind. Then you need to then go and contact, you know, it could be their guidance teacher or whatever, and then you take it from there. But the amount of stuff out with the classroom kind of needs to be seen to be believed.
Yep.
And I think that's something that, again, out with of education is that people don't actually realise. Like, that's the ratio between what you do in the classroom and preparing for that compared to what you do outside of that. It's getting closer to almost 50-50.
Yep.
And that's when it comes into, obviously, workload issues and other things.
So there's obviously still, you know, with the stats, obviously you read up on those education stats quite a lot, there's still a massive gap between kids that come from those richer areas, if you like, compared to those poorer, deprived areas. Do you see that in your school?
Well, we
Or
obviously,
do you see that in general? Sorry?
obviously we don't have a big group of kids that come from SIMD 9 and 10,
Yes.
so the most wealthy areas, but
affluent
we
areas.
do have them, but they're just small in number. But obviously, again, all those things in the background that you don't see, so chances are, again, more likely, not fact, but more likely a pupil from SIMD 9 and 10 has two parents who have a stable job. They both care for the pupil, they look after them, they're interested in what they're doing, they want to know what their plan is, medium, long term, whatever it might be. They will come to parents' evenings, they will read reports, they will phone up the school if there is an issue that needs to be dealt with, whether it's, you know, it could be bullying, it could be something to do with their classes, whatever it is. Whereas statistically more likely, the further you come down that scale, they're much less likely to do that. Then that presents itself in, could even be things like obviously having the financial flexibility to pay for tutors,
Yep.
things like that. So again, we run like supported study sessions through the terms, so October till December for prelims, we run that, and sort of January, February, right up till the end of the year towards the exams. And again, that's a chance for pupils that want to put in the time and the effort that won't be able to afford a tutor who's going to charge 25, 30, 35, 40 pound an hour,
Yep.
depending on what the level is. They can come, you know, and we're running nearly every single subject. So obviously me, modern studies, the guys in history, maths, English, science, art, all those support studies will run every day basically from Monday
Yep.
through to Friday. But again, it's, do they have the motivation to come to that? So it's like you can offer it, but not everybody takes up the offering.
Yeah.
And again, that could be any reason. That somebody could have a part-time job because maybe their parents are struggling or whatever, and they're taking a part-time job as well as being at school, and then they're turning around and saying to you, "Sorry, I can't come to support study on Wednesday because I'm working in Farm Foods or I'm working in
Yeah.
Tesco." You can't. You've no right to say anything about that because they're doing something meaningful and productive. But obviously, there's ones that don't have that, but they also just don't want to come. So then you're like, well, we're offering this. This would actually benefit you, but you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So
Now, this isn't obviously when we were talking about this. This isn't us saying a teacher that works at a school that's in that top, that 9 and 10 bracket you spoke about. That's not me saying they've got a pure easy life.
No.
Because obviously something we'll get into is the overworking of teachers and stuff, and we'll get into that. But I think a lot of people, this isn't us saying, like, oh, you've got it tough and they've no. I think as a collective, teachers have got it tough.
yeah, I think like just speaking from my own experience, like I used to work in a school like that. So before I went to my current school, I was in a school that was in a much wealthier area. The ratio of SIMD was much more towards the upper scale. And again, like you said, the workload's still the same. Do you know what I mean? You're still dealing with similar pressures, similar issues in classes, behaviour issues, attendance issues, but there's other things that you maybe wouldn't get in a different place.
Yeah.
So again, could be parental involvement, various other things, but it's just one of those things that you need to know the context of the school that you're working in. Like you might not know within day one of arriving there, but very quickly you find that out.
Aye.
But you kind of need to. You'll know the area that the school's in, but again, that's not always an indicator because kids can be bussed in for miles away. You know what I mean? They could be putting in a placing request, so the parents really want that kid to go to that school. They've sent them in a placing request, but they're from somewhere completely different geographically. So no, there's multiple issues, and I certainly wouldn't say that it was easier in that previous school to us here, nor would I say that this is
Just
much more
different
difficult. It's
challenges.
just different, but the workload for everybody is still increasing, regardless of what school you're teaching at.
I think one of the stats I'd read up on from the SQA was that, so this was from 2023, that only 4 in 10 pupils from the most deprived areas got higher compared to 8 out of 10 in those more affluent areas. What's your kind of thoughts on that? Or does it just speak more to the point of what we're talking about?
It's all linked into the stuff that obviously I've spoke about before, but I think, again, the kind of, I don't want to use the term kind of gold standard, but the standard that schools will often compare themselves against other schools is 5 hires. So how many pupils leave with 5 hires? Do you know what I mean? What percentage of your 5th and 6th years get 5 hires? And like you said, the further you go up to the schools in more wealthy areas, or the areas that get higher numbers of kids from SIMD 9 and 10, those numbers shoot up quite dramatically. But again, it's for most pupils, 5 hires might not be the thing that they actually need, because they're maybe not applying to university, they maybe aren't applying to college, they're applying for an apprenticeship, they're going to go and work for a year and then figure out what they want to do, so they might want to go to college after a year. They maybe just go straight into a job and they end up just enjoying that for now. So 5 hires isn't really something that on a CV is going to be ideal for somebody that's looking for a part-time job. And even like university courses, again, like most of them, unless you're talking medicine, law, things like that, where they want 5 A's in one go. So not across 2 years, but in 1 year. And that's only going to be a certain number of kids that are going to actually be applying for that. And again, if I just look at ourselves, we do get kids that apply for law and medicine and they get in because they've done really well and they've deserved it. But obviously the numbers, how many of them are doing that, most of them are coming from the schools that we've obviously already mentioned in more wealthy areas. And again, it then boils down to what else have you done, because the grades are just the baseline requirement. So I say this to anybody that's applying for something like that, you know, a law, vet medicine, whatever, it's like everybody's got 5 A's. So that doesn't make, not to sound too harsh, but that doesn't make you special.
It doesn't make
like,
you stand out.
It's great that you've got the 5.
Somebody's actually looking at it.
It's great that you've got the 5 A's, but they won't consider anybody that doesn't have 5 A's. Aye. So any applications that don't have 5 A's are binned immediately. They're not even looked at. And then it's then, well, what else have you done?
It's quite brutal, isn't it?
What else have you done?
Aye.
So have you done volunteering? Have you worked in a law firm? Have you got a bit of experience? Have you went and found out more about the courses? Like, what's your knowledge of the law course? What's your knowledge of the medicine course? What sets you apart, basically? And then that's when that comes down to the stuff that we've spoke about there. So are you an ambassador for one of the subjects in the school? Have you been a captain, or have you been the head boy or head girl in the school? And have you took leadership opportunities? Have you spoke at assemblies and stuff like that? Stuff that makes you stand out. Yep. That's what's going to make the difference. And again, that all comes down to things like confidence. So what we tend to find is we get a lot of pupils that have the knowledge base, but they don't have the confidence to go out and implement it. Like, just as one kind of example, we went on a trip last August to the, what's that called again? Can't even remember the name of it, but I was in town anyway, and it was a guy, Alistair Campbell, who was doing a book signing thing, and we took kids there. We didn't really know what it was going to be, but we thought it would be quite interesting. He used to basically be a special advisor to the Prime Minister, so it was like, this will be good for us. Loads of kids there, different schools, and then he was basically wanting the kids to come up on the stage and talk about an issue that they felt strongly about and felt passionate about, and I was like, great. I was like, I've got so many kids here that talk to me about stuff in school and classes, what they're doing for their assignment, and I'm like, right, great, go up and talk about poverty, go up and talk about the class divide, go up and talk about private schools or the NHS or whatever. And when they turned round, they were all like, oh, no me, like, I can't do that. There was a lot of people in the room. There was like 200 people, obviously,
obviously.
but mostly pupils. But then some of the kids for the other schools went and done it, and honestly, every one of them was unbelievable. Like the way they spoke about their issue and the confidence in that. And that's one of the things I'm saying. I'm like, you know how to do this, but you maybe just don't have the push or that belief. And those were kids in 5th and 6th year, so you would hope that they would have developed that confidence by that point. But it's just one of those things that you have to keep telling them, like, you can do this. And now sometimes not make them uncomfortable, but sometimes put them at their comfort zone,
Yep.
because I'm like, that's when you will learn the best.
That's
like,
when kids are. I think when kids are challenged, I think they're not challenged enough nowadays.
No.
But it's like really putting them at their comfort zone and helping them develop.
And even like we've had like taster sessions at universities the last couple of weeks, so kids have been leaving school for a week to go to Strathclyde, go to Glasgow to find out about business, about law, about politics, about history, about medicine, whatever. And some of them like, oh, I don't know, like I'm going to be meeting all these new people, and I'm like, no, you have to put yourself out there, because if you apply for this and you get in a year's, 2 years time, you're going to have to do this for real. It's like, this is only a week. You might never see these people ever again anyway, so you just have to go for it.
Give us a wee kind of glimpse into it.
It's like a taster session basically. Most of them, anytime a kid's ever went for politics or history or something related to my subject, they've always come back saying, I might not go and do that at uni, but I found it really interesting.
Yep.
I actually enjoyed the experience, and
Yep.
I was like, well, you've actually taken something from it then, so.
Yeah, and it was kind of back to that when kids are obtaining their grades and working obviously towards these things. You'd said obviously about kids that are earning 5 hires, so obviously doing my wee research as I've done, because obviously education not been my forte. So stat I'd got from the Times was that only 28% of all pupils earned 5 hires. So that's the lowest rate in a decade, and also nearly 60% of those, nearly 60% of the most deprived areas leaving without actual any hires. So
Yeah.
kids from SMD 1, 2, actually not leaving with a single hire.
Yeah, that again, that doesn't surprise me. And obviously there's been things in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, like external factors, lockdowns and various things that have impacted it, but we're still seeing sort of a semblance of that
Yep.
effect on that. But like I said as well, it is the standard that's referred to through education and through media outlets and stuff like that, but for some kids, like, hires are just not achievable.
Yep.
And that's the thing, there's other things that are coming in right now, so NPAs, so National Progression Awards, they're things that are all mainly course-based and more like practical. And I'm like, if that's what you want to go and do when you leave here, there is no point in you collecting hires, because that's not going to be relevant for you when you leave here. Do you know what I mean? So for some, it is going to be important if that's what they want to go and do. But I think sometimes we've got a tendency to just shoehorn them all into the one set, the one box, and just go, right, you're all going to do this. And the ones that make it come out the other side with the collection of hires they need, and then everybody else is kind of just left at the side. Like they've sat 3 hires, but they found it too demanding, they found it too challenging.
How do we close the gap? What's your thoughts? Obviously, you might not have like a pure, this is the answer, but what's your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, we could be here all day, but I think, like, obviously resources, like, and by that I mean financial and also physical people, like resources of staff. Like, there's loads of stuff out right now about teachers getting temporary contracts and what is effectively a 0 hours contract, which for a job that's that professional, again, speaking as somebody that did have a 0 hours contract when I was at university and I had a part-time job, I know the trials and the tribulations of a 0 hours contract. Nobody should be in that position when they have worked for 4 years or 5 years studying whatever, business, art, you know, computing, history, English, whatever it is, and that's what they want to go and do, to then be left on a supply contract that's temporary. They're moving between different schools at different times. They can be in a school for a month, and then they get an email saying there's another school on the other side of the city that needs you more, so you're away. Because then you need to then learn how that school's processes work. You need to get to know the kids. You need to know the courses you're teaching. You need to know the staff you're working with. What's the dynamic like? Are you going to get on with them? Or are you not? And again, it's no wonder that probably those staff that are moving about don't get the chance to build up any experience and skill, but also it's no wonder then that has an impact on the classes, because if you've got a class that's, I'll just take my own subject, like National 5 or higher, Modern Studies, if they've got the one teacher through the whole year, they're far more likely to do well.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Consistency.
And even if they know somebody from the year before, so they're like, oh, I had Mrs.
Such and
last year, I had him last year, like, that's good, it's a bit of continuity. Whereas if stuff is moving constantly, it's no wonder that then the end result is inconsistent, because everything that's getting poured into it, and that's just on the surface of the teaching aspect. We could go in further to support staff, like support for learning workers who work in the classrooms. We have a woman who is amazing, and she's like the English as additional language teacher. So we've got a lot of kids that English isn't their first language. She comes in and she works with all the kids that does that. So who needs dictionaries when it comes to exam time? But because, again, the financial pressures, we don't have her 5 days a week. She goes between 2 schools.
Aye.
And I'm like, somebody that's as skilled as that and as good, and especially now when we're getting
Can
more
you imagine
kids.
the impact that would have having her more permanently?
Yeah, every school should have somebody like that all the time.
It
It
shouldn't be
have
spread
to
so
be.
thin across 2
Shouldn't
or
have
3.
to be you're here 2 days and then you go to another school for 3 days,
Aye, that's
because she then has to know 2 completely different sets of kids and their circumstances and how it works in those 2 different schools. Whereas if everybody had that consistency, again, she does know the kids inside out, but she would know that set of kids in that school inside out, and then that other school would have somebody else doing the exact same job. But again, it all comes down to resources and budgets and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Something I kind of want to get into is what you just spoke about in terms of how big a role support workers, teachers, department heads, how big a role and effect these people have on pupils to aim as high as possible. So, i.e., going to uni, going to college, starting an apprenticeship. What's your thoughts? How big do you feel an impact that you have on kids, or how do you feel your role is?
I think it can be massive. It's whether you want to, and most people obviously do. Most people want to throw themselves into that and be involved, because the end result is something that, again, I don't know if it'll come up later, but for me personally, I can't describe that feeling. Like it's one of the best things about this job is when you've put time, you've put effort into somebody, and the end result it might come out in grades, so they've done well in your subject and they go on and do something, college, university or whatever. I get more of a kind of buzz off their results than I did my own at school. So when I saw mine, I'm a bit like that anyway, where if I do something, I'm just like, right, that's cool, what's the next thing? I don't kind of, no bask in it, but like relish it, the accomplishment of what you've done. I'm kind of like, right, that's cool, what's my next thing? I need to focus on the next thing. I've done that, I've ticked it off.
Right. Yes, I mean, you boxed it off, you're moving on.
I'm moving on, but when I see their results and I know somebody has knocked their pan in the full year and they've got that A, they've got that B, or they've got that C, but they've absolutely maxed out, like they've worked so hard and they've passed, the buzz after that is
developing a pupil into a pass.
Indescribable. So that's one thing, and obviously we have so many other support mechanisms in the school that something I don't feel like I noticed it as much when I was at school, but maybe I was just oblivious to it. I think I kind of just coasted through school, not in a bad way, but just like I never felt like I had to go and speak to my guidance teacher or whatever.
I was the same. I don't think I ever remember this, but maybe just at the end when I was leaving school, I think that was the first time I'd actually ever spoke to them. They're like, kind of like, what are you doing after school? And I'd actually went, I don't have a clue, to be honest. I actually think I applied for like Southampton. So it was like a football thing. I don't know if I've ever told
like
you
a scholarship thing.
It was like a football studies, but I think I just went, football sound. Oh, there's football. I'll go and do that. But then I think I realised I was like, why am I doing this? Like that's just daft. But that's the first time I ever spoke to my guidance teacher.
I mean, obviously, like they all have a guidance teacher assigned to them, and through school they should be meeting them fairly regularly about options. So like second year, what you pick in subjects going into third year, what you picking from third year into fourth year, and so on. That happens obviously yearly process almost, and then obviously it's come down to things like personal statements. So again, if a kid's been in my class the year before and they've done well, they'll ask for a reference. So they'll say, and I put in, you got this grade and here's what they've done. You know, they worked hard, they were organised, they were a pleasure to work with, and all these other things, and would they be suitable for a higher education environment? And then obviously the guidance teacher's job is to collate all that information and produce a whole reference. Alongside that, again, personal statements and stuff like that. I know that's kind of changing to more question-based things rather than a physical big statement like an essay thing, but constantly looking at those type of things.
Yeah.
So saying, right, you write up a draft, we'll have a look at it, we'll suggest improvements, can you put in, if you've done it outside of school, like your part-time job, that shows you're punctual, that shows you're organised, you know, do you volunteering somewhere, what other things have you done charity work through the school or other places, get all of that in there, because again, it's about making you stand out from somebody else when there could be 50 places on a college course or 50 places on a university course, but there's 300 people applying for it. So you need to be standing out. You can't just have the grades.
Yeah.
The grades are not an afterthought, but the grades are almost like that's the baseline. Everybody's mostly got that.
What else you do?
You need something that's going to set you apart. So everybody is kind of working towards that. Like it's not something that's like an official role for me, but even I would look at personal statements, like in the last 5-6 years, I've probably looked at about 50 personal statements, even though that's not my official role within the school. Like, I'm not helping kids apply for UCAS and other things, but I'll just say to them, I've had to write a personal statement not that long ago when I did my postgrad, so I'm like, I'll take a look at it and I'll suggest some improvements. And again, everybody's kind of working towards that, like, through the year. And again, obviously, I'm mainly speaking about university there, but could be anything. Could be they need me to write a reference for a college place, or they're a part-time job. I've actually been a couple of people's references when they've applied for a part-time job, just because they're looking for somebody that knows them or has taught them. And again, that's just me, but I know that the other staff will have done the same for all of these kids. So I'd definitely say the support systems are definitely better or more visible than what I can remember, but maybe again that's just...
Probably after speaking to you as well, it seems like it has changed.
Yeah,
So
it's very different.
That's good, really good. Something else I wanted to talk about was your workload. So obviously it's something you talked to me a wee bit about as well, outside
Really?
of here, but we've chatted about it a couple of times. See when you're like to me, like, mate, I'm marking papers, like, I've been marking them all night, and then I'm like, off to you, mate, you're working hard. We've chatted about it a couple of times, but obviously no in depth. Something you talk about is your work actually outside of your work. So obviously you've got your main role as your teacher and doing that, but I don't think a lot of people realise how much more there is to being a school teacher than just coming in, teaching your classes, leaving, legs up, watch TV, back at it the next day.
Yeah, again, obviously, keep my kind of analogies as vague as possible, but in any job, like what you're doing PT, and somebody who works as a nurse, somebody who works as a doctor, somebody who's a police officer, somebody who's a teacher, there's people that do the job, and then there's people that act like they do the job, or they do the bare minimum. That's always going to be the case, no matter what the job is, how important it is, how much money you get paid, whatever. There's going to be people who take it seriously, and then there's going to be people that see it as a means to an end. And again, that's fine. If you're fulfilling your duties, then nobody can really turn around and say to you, well, what about this and what about that? That might then affect somebody going for promotions and things like that, obviously, but that's just the way it's going to be. But like I've said to you before, like, the teaching bit, the standing in front of the class bit, that's the easy bit. That's the bit that comes as you build up experience, you just get more natural at it. So
that's like autopilot.
It is autopilot to an extent. Obviously things can be thrown up that you don't expect, and you need to deal with that, but it's all the other stuff. So I've not done it in the last couple of years, but even just like I've taken school football teams, for example. So normally it would be the PE staff that would take most of the responsibility with that, but again, at my school, they're really good at opening that up and saying if anybody wants to do something. Like, we had an English teacher running a basketball club before. I took a football team. Other teachers that weren't PE teachers took football teams, but again, it's something that I've spoke to you before as well. It's that, like, because everybody's been to school, they think they know how a school works.
Aye.
And I'm like, you have no idea.
No,
like, you have no idea. All the little bits and the wee kind of footery bits that nobody really sees or thinks about. They just go, you turn up at that time, you do the work, you take some jotters home, you mark them, and the job's done.
I'm like 20 minutes
I'm like, if only that was the case. So just to use that football team example, like, you're sending hundreds of emails. Sometimes you hear back, sometimes you don't. Then you're organising a pitch, then you're organising a ref. The ref turns up on time, great. The ref doesn't turn up on time. You've got 20 kids standing at the side of the pitch, ready to play. What are you supposed to do? You've then paid the guy already.
Right.
You're then waiting for that. Then it's, if you're going to another school, you need to arrange a bus. Buses are expensive, and that's something that the school I'm at then has been really good at. They obviously arrange that pretty easily, but again, it's like, the bus needs to come at this time, we need to leave at this time, the kit needs washed, all of these things that you're just like...
You get down that rabbit hole with actual...
They're just tiny things, but you're like, actually, they all add up to quite a big deal. And I only did that for 2 years. I would do it again at some point in the future, but again, that's the workload. So you teach all day, then your kids maybe get out of class early in the last period maybe, then you're driving off to Paisley to go and play a school there in a Scottish Cup game, and then you don't get back till 6:30, 7 o'clock, but that's you just back to school, because you need to take all the kids to the school, then they're getting picked up or not, are they getting their own way home, are they getting a bus home?
Aye.
Then you need to make your way up the road. So that can sometimes be 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Aye,
and obviously
it's a lot.
you could be playing games fairly regularly. Obviously, if you're playing we have a pitch at our school, so if we're at home, it's easier. But again, it's still managing that sort of process. Things like, again, parents' evenings. Again, it's something that you have to do as part of your actual role and responsibilities, obviously, but you are preparing all the paperwork
for that
in advance of, the class results, their essays, their tests, whatever it might be. You're presenting that information, but then you might have saw 15 sets of parents out of 30, the other 15 haven't turned up, but you're still sitting there until 6:30, and then you need to make your own way up the road.
It's quite a lot. How much overtime do you feel you work? So obviously it can change, obviously, with exam season, and then you're having to mark, and then obviously off exam season. But on average, what would you say?
I've no idea, because I've never actually sat and counted it. I would be slightly tempted, and I'm not saying this for me personally. I know that other people would be saying the same, so I'm not saying that to look at me and what I'm doing. But I'm genuinely would be terrified if I actually sat and calculated it.
And what you almost don't want to know.
I don't want to know, because it. But that's one of the things that's becoming, it's in the sort of discussion with unions and stuff like that, is that for me personally, like I said earlier, I don't feel like I'm not getting paid suitably for the work I do as a class teacher. I'm fine with that, but there's other issues that are coming up about workload, about classroom sizes, so how many kids in a room, the amount of hours you actually physically teach in a week. These are all things that, for me, and I know other people would probably agree with me, that I've spoke to just within my own school and other friends I've got at other schools, that they would say that that's becoming the main priority for people, is that we need to look at this, because people are getting burned out, and people are disappearing. Like, good people are disappearing and going and doing other things.
Like good teachers. You're losing good teachers because going
and doing a job that pays similarly or sometimes even less, but the work-life balance is just much, much better.
Yeah. What do you think the percentage of classroom teaching versus admin, marking, parents' night preparing? What do you feel like your percentage is then, if you had to kind of value it up?
In terms of time or effort?
Just probably both, a wee kind of mixture.
I don't know. It's probably dangerously close to 50-50.
And do you think that, if you then look at that, do you think that's right?
No, because for me, a lot of the stuff is quite not technical, but it's quite kind of, like you said, it's admin based. It's doing this and doing that, and it can be quite time consuming. But the kind of cost benefit of it's way off. So you're spending all this time doing this, and then what you get out of it's actually quite minimal.
Yep.
Whereas if we all get more time to develop courses and improve things, that takes a lot of time to get that right.
Yep.
But then when you do the product of it at the end is much more rewarding.
Yep.
Like what you would see from that, the kind of efficiency of it all would be so much better. So it's one of those things, and again, what you were talking about there, I'm obviously speaking about marking exams, so again, get paid for that. But I've had conversations with many people and don't think we're getting paid fairly for that work, which is in addition to...
Something I was going to go on to. Do you feel teachers will use it as a kind of whole? Do you feel teachers are fairly compensated for the work that they do and put in, and the effort they kind of put into their work and
everything? I think, like what I was saying there about, I'm not going to sit here and cry about my pay, because I do think we do get paid fairly for what we do, but it's all those other things that
the extras,
when they come with other things, the kind of financial compensation for that, for want of a better term, is not appropriate, at all. And again, just even taking the teacher out of it, if you go down the school and you go to other staff, like we were saying, those support workers and stuff like that, I know for a fact that their actual pay for what they do is nowhere near suitable. The work, the time, the effort they put in to kids that have got additional support needs and all the various complexities that are thrown in there, their pay is nowhere near suitable, And again, it's all coming down to the budget thing again. It's you've only got so much, and that only carries you so far. So
before you need to look into it and go, what's going on?
If we're serious about this, you have to cut down class sizes, which then means you have to employ more teachers, probably employ more support workers, and that obviously costs more money. So it's one of those things.
But you get in what you put in.
You should.
You get out.
Yeah.
Sorry, you get out what you put in.
You should. Anyway.
What are your hopes and fears for Scottish education in the next 10 years?
I've no idea. I couldn't answer that in a sort of a full way, but I think just looking at the changes in my relatively short time, I'm not going to sit here and say I'd say I'm fairly experienced, but not. There's people I know and people I work with that have taught for 20 years longer than that, and they'd be much better placed to probably answer that because they've probably seen more peaks and troughs than I have. So you probably tend to find these things are quite cyclical, and things will feel better for a while, then they'll get worse, and then they'll get better and worse, or whatever. But I think certainly, even since I started as a student teacher and then a probationer, I'm slightly concerned about small things in the classroom and things like attention span, focus, mobile phones, which we've spoke about before. Like, these are all like distractions that people feel the need to be occupied in their mind all the time, but it's like, if your phone's pinging 30, 40 times in 50 minutes and you're looking at that constantly and it's just random stuff, it doesn't actually matter. You think it matters, but it doesn't actually. You know, it's like if it was a true emergency, somebody would contact the school would contact us, and then you would then go if it was something that was quite thingy. But it tends to not be that more often than not.
I'm kind of glad that when I mean towards the kind of end of school, 3rd, 4th, 5th, if you like, I feel like that's when the phones started to really come out, the touch screens, and I think everybody was like, oh, what's this new thing? But I can't even imagine what it's like now in school with phones being like, honestly, it's like an extension of the hand, and you just feel constantly people are just sitting like that all day. So when they come into school, that ability then to go like that is just, they can't do it.
Yeah, I'll see it sometimes in, like, we have like our wee like dining bit, or it's an assembly hall that doubles up as the kind of dining room or whatever, and you sometimes see a full table of kids that could all be pals, 6, 7, 8 of them. Most of them aren't even looking at each other, they're just looking at whatever they're doing, looking at TikToks, sending each other whatever, but not actually having a conversation. And then you then wonder why when they come into the class and you're asking them to do a group activity, they can't work in groups because they don't know how to socialise and interact with each other. But again, it's the concentration thing. If your phone's vibrating constantly with notifications, but I'm asking you to read something and highlight it and then work on that, you're going to be distracted by that. And even when some of them put it on the desk and they're like, oh, sir, I'm not looking at it, and I'm like, I know you're not, but I also don't want it on the desk, because the minute the notification comes up and the screen lights up, the thing I'm asking you to do, you're not doing that anymore. And
that's no longer the attention. And then he's missed vital bits of information that you've maybe passed on.
Oh, it's that you constantly have to repeat your instructions potentially several times, and then most of them, when you build up a routine of, I've asked you to put it away, I'm warning you, you've done it again, I'm going to put the phone on my desk. I've no interest in keeping it because it doesn't bother me, but you'll get it back at the end. And most of them are fine, or if they ask to go to the bathroom. Some of them are just doing it purely to time waste. Others actually genuinely. So I'm like, well, if you genuinely need to go to the bathroom, you'll leave your phone on my desk then.
Like, you don't need that.
And 99 times out of 100, they do it because I'm consistently saying that all the time. Whereas I'm not doing one day, I'm like, put it on the desk, and the next day I'm just going, whatever. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Because if I do that, they'll then turn around and go, but sir, you said to him yesterday, or you said to her yesterday that you never said to her about the phone. And then that inconsistency then makes them confused. So you have to obviously be super clear, consistent, regimented, organised, routined. And most times when you do that, you don't generally tend to get any sort of pushback on that, more often than not. But I think generally stuff like that is sort of worrying me, and also the kind of lack of independence and kind of taking leadership over their own stuff, like just being organised. Like, if we've got their work or their jotters up at the back or whatever, it's coming in, getting your iPad out, getting your jotter out. I'm constantly saying that. And it's all right in the younger years, I know that you have to do that, but as we go up, I'm like, I shouldn't have to be doing that now. Like, you should know to get your stuff, like, come and ask me for a pen, not just sit at the desk for 10 minutes with your jotter open and no pen and looking at me, and I'm going, you expect me to bring that pen to you? I was like, no, you can come up. You can come up and take a pen. Like, come on. Like,
you don't need to baby them.
But that's the thing, a lot of them, it's kind of like learned helplessness. And again, I obviously don't know exactly, but is that coming from external factors, like away from school? Like, is it just, it's all convenience? It's like, oh, you're bored, stick an iPad in front of your face, or stick a laptop in front of your face, stick a phone in front of your face. Like, it'll be fine. But actually, we're probably seeing, like, being in school and the classes are like the collateral damage of that almost. Like, and again, it's most times, like, I'll feel my phone vibrating when I'm in classes and I'm teaching and stuff like that, but more often than not, I'm like, it's going to be a load of rubbish. It'll be an email for something or nothing that's that important. I'm like, it can wait. And that's one of the things I'm like, you guys, you do get a break and you do get a lunch and you get the end of the day. At that point, you can do whatever you want with your phone. Do you know what I mean? And that's obviously even before you get into more worrying things about what they're sending to each other, recording stuff in schools and all that sort of stuff. It's just a...
It's an absolute, black...
It's a minefield, really, to be
absolute
honest.
minefield.
I'd probably say that's
there.
probably the biggest thing, and obviously we've touched on it many times during the course of this conversation, but like the budget things is like, I don't know where that's going, because what I'm seeing is like people are almost like passing the blame to each other and going, oh, this isn't our responsibility that schools don't have the appropriate budgets, and then they're turning and saying, no, actually, no, it is. It's the government or it's the councils, and they're just going, to me, to you, we're not really responsible. We've given you the money, but you've not spent it. You've not spent it wisely. There's too much of that going on, and I don't feel like people are taking enough.
You get together and talk about it, and then actually drive together rather than just passing blame and going, but you didn't spend that right, or you didn't give me enough.
Yeah, it is a wee bit of kind of like blame culture, and it's like, let's all have an adult conversation about this. And if most people have got their best interests of making your place of work better, making your school better, making your classes better, helping the kids. That's what it's all about. Like I said to you, when they get their results through, like that feeling's just, I can't even describe it, how good it is.
Elation.
You're just like, this is good, and I'm like, if that's what we're all working towards, and it's not just about grades, but I'm just using that as a reference. Like when you see them going and doing something, like I can remember last year, the year before, like 4 kids in the senior school were doing this like YPI thing, like Youth Philanthropy Initiative thing, and they won, our school's one, so they get like £3,000 for their own charity, but then they then got to go to the main YPI thing in Perth, I think it was, and the 4 of them stood up and spoke about their charity in front of like 1,200 people, and I'm like, I teach the 4 of them. Do you know what I mean? You're just like, that's crazy. I was like, I don't even know if I could speak in front of 1,200 people. I'm like a class of 30, and maybe the staff, that's probably about the max I've ever done. So it's one of those things, you just like, you take your hat off to them. You're like,
fair play, innit?
That's amazing. Like that's what that makes it all worth it. All that stuff we've spoke about, or the rubbish, the admin, the extra stuff you're doing. When you see stuff like that, you're like, nah, actually we're doing something pretty good here. Like that's what it should be.
It's nice to see this, because obviously, as I said, we very briefly touched on it outside here, and if not, we don't really. But it's nice to actually have you sit down and talk about your work, and it's nice to see in that way pure passion, as I assumed you would be anyway, about how you like to see your kids and the ones you've developed and taught go into bigger and better things and doing things like that.
And that's the thing, like taking the ego out of it. It's like, you know that there's going to be kids in your classes that are going to go and do bigger and better things than you. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be somebody out there that's going to go and do law and end up some massive defence lawyer or prosecutor for the government, or going to end up like a surgeon or a consultant or something. But you're like, that's good. Like, if you've even helped a tiny bit, even though I don't teach like science or anything like that, you're like, if they've come into my class in 4th year, 5th year, 6th year, and I've just helped them along, then that's ideal.
You've done your job. So looking back, what advice would you give a young Mr. Mathers? Or even for that, as new teachers that are coming into the job, what advice would you give them?
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. No, I think the challenges that are now presenting themselves like in 2025 are quite different to me doing it in sort of 2016, 2017. Like, obviously all the budget stuff that we spoke about, and it's like, before you would do either your 4-year undergrad in education and whatever, so it'd be like a joint honours thing, or the way that I did it, and most people I work with now have done it, is they do their 4-year undergrad, so did politics and then did a PGD sort of master's equivalent in just education and modern studies. So once you've done that, you then know you're going to get a probation year where your salary is effectively paid for, and you know you're going to that school. But after that, right now it kind of feels a bit like the Wild West. Like, it's very uncertain, and that's one of the things about teaching that people often say is a positive, is like the job security. But right now it feels very insecure. It feels very unstable. Like, there's been stats out about the amount of temporary contracts and supply contracts that councils are giving out has gone to like 90-odd%, whereas like 5 or 10 years ago it was like 20 or 30.
That's a wild spike.
It's just like, it's so uneven, and obviously people have got their own things. They have their cars, their mortgages. They might be coming into teaching later in life and they've got kids and a family, and like you need something fairly secure to keep paying your bills and look after your family and stuff. So that's something I would hope most people would be aware of that if they're kind of reading into it and they're not just applying to teaching on a whim because they don't know what they want to do. If they're really interested, then obviously help them, making a difference, and actually like kids. That's one of the things, like actually like working with kids. Like me personally, I do like it, but I then look at other people I know who are like primary teachers, and I know I could never do that. It's just a different ball game, different world, different expectations, different standards, stuff like that. So I do take my hat off to them. But again, it's like knowing, you won't know everything, but reading into it and researching into it and finding out, like I said, about the situation with the contracts and how things are working, and even like universities have been like cutting down the numbers of people who are allowed to go onto these courses because physically there isn't the jobs. So it's like you could take 50 English students and 50 maths students who are then going to go on and be a probationers in a school, but then after that year there's no 50 English jobs or 50 maths jobs about. So then they're just left in this system of the wilderness and
like
getting
no man's land. They're just left
no man's land and getting random supply jobs, like I said, where they might come into a school for 3 months maybe, and then they're away, or maybe at best like covering somebody who's on maternity leave, for example. So if one of your staff members is having a baby and they're off for 9 months or a year, somebody comes in and is there for a year, but then after that they're gone, they're away to another school. So that, I would say, is something that I've been quite fortunate, and again I think it is semi-luck as well, which is something that's no great. It's like I went from this first school I was at to this one, and I've been there the whole time. And I've not had to worry about those sorts of things, but other people have, and it's no fair, because if you're there for the right reasons and you're experienced and you're qualified and you're skilled and you're passionate about what you're doing, like you shouldn't be in that position. Because then, even like I said about the inconsistencies in the class, like the kids will sometimes turn around and go, "Oh, where's Mrs. So-and-so, or where's Mr.?" And you'd be like, they've moved on. And you can't really explain why. You can go into it, but even then it won't make sense to most of them. They don't really understand why. Like, it's different if somebody goes and gets another job, like they go and interview somewhere and they get a promotion or whatever. You can say to them, look, they've moved on and they've done this, or if you want to. But all of that stuff is just so inconsistent, and even stuff about, you were saying, you referenced SQ earlier, like they're changing, so they're moving from, they've renamed themselves, but effectively
they've new coded it.
It's going to be this. It's going to be very similar, I suspect. And just if you want to do it and you're not worried about those pitfalls that I've mentioned, then obviously like go for it 100%. Like a few pupils who've just left had said to me, like, they're going to go and do maybe politics or history, but they're thinking about teaching maybe in the medium term. And again, I'm saying, right, well, if you need to, you can come in. We can get you in the classrooms, we can get you some experience in that, and you can take it from there, because when you're applying for these things, you need that to set you apart. Do you know what I mean? They need to know that you're serious about this and you're not just, again, like I said, applying on a whim. So I think if somebody's mind is in the right place and they want to do it and they're not going to be so heavily reliant on the security of it, then I think it's something that obviously people should consider. But I think just for right now, the kind of workforce in general feels very unstable, and obviously people are complaining about violence in schools, behaviour issues in schools, the workload issues about how many classes you teach a week, and the size of classes and stuff like that. These are all things that are kind of bubbling away in the background, and I wouldn't want somebody to come into it and be blindsided by that and go, oh, well, wait a minute, I thought this would all be...
That's not what I signed up for.
I thought this was going to be all rosy, like, it's going to be brilliant, I'm going to have my own... Even things like having your own classroom, like, people probably think that's like a thing. It's not a thing. Like, if you go to a school and you get your own classroom, you are one of...
Lucky.
You're lucky, it's rare. Like, you're like, wow, but even then, it won't just be you using it.
Almost, and then no way, it's not earning it, it's kind of just how things juggle.
It's how things fall into place, so you might just naturally go in to replace somebody who's just left. They had their own room, so then therefore you just get assigned that room. But that doesn't mean you're the only person using it. It could be 4 or 5 other teachers using it, different subjects, different people coming in and out every time.
So
even
expect the unexpected.
expect 100% expect the unexpected. Like very rewarding. Like sometimes a day look at my like at the end of a month or whatever, and you're like, did I actually just get paid to do that? Like that was brilliant. Like, and then obviously, like you said, peaks and troughs. Like December time, prelims, marking, reports, when it's all building up and it's over a number of weeks. You're a bit like
exams, just heavy.
And you're like, I doesn't feel like I'm getting.
Prepare yourself for the unexpected.
I expect the unexpected is probably the
Best way to
takeaway
put it.
from this conversation, I would say.
Listen, mate, thank you so much. Like coming on, I think we're a really good listen for everybody in terms of people that don't know about education. Even for myself, sitting listening, I really appreciate your time and also talking about it.
No bother, mate. Been a pleasure.
Thanks, mate.